So my name is Nickie Sekera, co-founder of Community Water Justice, and we are a network of frontline communities against water privatization in Maine. And we're determined to secure protections, rights, and accessibility to our groundwater through education and action for our future generations. We formed in 2012 during a point where we were escalating a situation around the Nestle Corporation, who was moving to secure a 45-year contract which gives them exclusive rights to our groundwater for the next 45 years. We brought this case up to the Maine State Supreme Court, where they determined that the agency who approves such contracts, they do not have to consider environmental impacts with approving such contracts. So that should send us a strong warning sign and about what's in line for our future with our water resources in Maine. Nestle had tried to get a 50-year contract out in California previously, but communities rallied and shot it down. So when they came to Maine to propose a similar contract, they repackaged it differently. So they were calling it a 25-year contract with 4 or 5-year automatic renewals. But to a local rural community, that's a 45-year contract because we can't afford to challenge their contracts in court. They're a corporation that has, they're $296 billion, and so they beat Maine's GDP by several times, and so we can't afford to. That's Nestle, yep, for the Poland Spring brand of bottled water, for those of you in the room that may not know that. So let's take the 30,000-foot view. According to the World Economic Forum, water scarcity is one of the largest global risks in terms of potential impact over the next decades. Currently, an estimated 35% of the world's population lacks access to clean drinking water. And by 2025, which isn't far away, an estimated 1.8 billion people will be living in countries or regions with absolute water scarcity. And 2/3 of the world population could be living under water-stressed conditions. And I think it's also important to consider that since I was born in 1970, the global population has doubled. So human need has doubled in that time, right? And in a much shorter time again, we can expect our population to again double. But the amount of water sources that we have here on our planet are the same amount that's been here 500,000 years ago, and that will be here in the future as well. So we really need to take a step back and approach how we treat our water, how we build our legal infrastructure surrounding it. At one point in human history, humans decide that we should own the water or, have the idea of ownership of water. And so we built volumes of law surrounding this idea to determine who gets access and who may be denied. So we're really in a sweet spot of a moment to look at Maine state statutes and bring forward sensible groundwater protection laws to see us over the next 100 years. Nestle has a 100-year plan for Maine, but Maine does not have a 100-year plan for Maine. So that's why we're doing this work. So let's see. So Poland Spring. How many here have not heard of Poland Spring brand? Okay, we all have. It's been part of, right, they've existed in the state of Maine since 1849 and were bought out by the Nestle Corporation in the mid-80s. And since that time, they're because of their marketing, it's become New York City's #1 selling SKU in all of their city, and they export enough for 850 gallons per person in the state of Maine currently. Yeah, it's a lot, and growing. So right now, they're in 10 different communities in the state of Maine. Some places they take the water and pay nothing for it. In the case of Freiburg, where I live, they pay 1/10 of 1 cent per gallon, which roughly equates to $17.80 per 8,500 gallon tanker truck.
Wow.
Yeah, so the markup is huge, and so, yeah, they're getting very wealthy off our groundwater sources. Let's see. So Hollis, Maine, they currently have the second largest bottled water facility in the world, and they crank out about 250,000 cases of bottled water per day. And by case, that's the 20 packs of 16-ounce bottles. And they're producing, 20, I heard a rough estimate once, 20 billion plastic bottles that they're sentencing to our landfills and waterways, and I'm seeing recycling estimates anywhere between 75% and 91% that doesn't get recycled. So we have a huge problem mounting on us, not only with displacing our water from our local ecological systems, but also with what to do with this plastic waste. Let's see. So another concern that we've seen with Nestle is their achieved regulatory capture. And if you're not familiar with that term, that means that we have Nestle employees in Maine who are sitting on our regulatory boards. And so these regulatory boards are legislated to determine, their risk and limitations on their business. And so you'll find them on our Board of Environmental Protection, and you'll find them on the Maine Drinking Water Program. And during our Supreme Court case, it took us 1.5 years to get Maine Public Utility Commissioners to all recuse themselves because they all had financial ties to Nestle. So it's really hard to move past them, get laws passed, because their lobbying power in Augusta, as one of the corporations that gives the most money to our political campaign as well, to get laws passed that are meaningful and going to reform our state laws. How am I doing on time, by the way? I'm not very good at judging that.
5 more minutes.
Okay, great. Let's see.
7 more minutes, right?
So, by privatizing our water and sewer systems in the state of Maine, local government officials, we abdicate control over a vital public resource. And privatization limits public accountability. Multinational water corporations are primarily accountable to their stockholders and not to the people that they serve. Losing public input on how our water allocations will go does not ensure our future water security. Now, we have another considerable threat that we've been looking at recently, not only with bottled water outfits such as Nestle, but we have the Maine Water Company. Does anybody here live in a community where their public water system is run by Maine Water Company? Okay. What community do you live in, if you don't mind saying?
St. George,
Okay,
Thames Harbor.
Right, okay. So Maine Water Company sounds benign, Maine company, good local, just like Poland Spring, right? Good local company. But they currently run water systems for 20 different communities in Maine, and they're trying to get into Waldoboro right now. I think they've managed their system currently, and they're looking to take over their public water system. And what people don't understand right now, they're going through a $2.6 billion value merger with a California company, San Jose Water, and which will make them the 3rd largest private water utility in the United States. So if we've taken lessons from Europe, who recently tried to, again, reform from privatization, because what they were finding is water rates would skyrocket and their service diminished. But how that's dangerous in Maine is we won't have any input if a private company wants to negotiate contracts with outfits such as Nestle to export our water, as was the case in our community when we were fighting that 45-year contract. So we want to be cautious, and we want to keep our eye on this, and hopefully wherever you live, you'll support your local water district in maintaining the public infrastructure by local people and for local people. That's another big problem that we have on our hands currently. I know Waldoboro is saying that they don't have enough money to pay for their current infrastructure updates. And so, Maine Water may come in and help them and say that, well, we can take care of those problems, and do you want this burden of having to maintain your water infrastructure when we can take it over and then you won't have that problem anymore. But the problem is when Wall Street gets a cut of our water delivery systems, then again, losing local control to that to hedge fund managers on Wall Street, that's what we're looking at in the future. In Freiburg, we've had a few large parcels bought up by a holding company of Bank of America, who is selling water futures. So that could well be the future of Maine if we're not going to approach this differently. So what I've been doing at the State House recently, we had 3 bills go in this session, and I'll talk about the one that is going to pass. It's LD 1121. It passed unanimously in the Senate, but what it does, it allowed the state to acknowledge, finally, that water is a necessity. There are 3 places in Maine state statutes where it lists out what human necessities are, and water was not in that list anywhere. There was, food, shelter, clothing, and in some cases, fertilizer and fuel. But water was absent, and it includes, and then in another state statute, it was for provisions for jails, so our incarcerated people. Under the list of necessities, it didn't list water, and under, I know, right? Yeah, and then under commerce as well. So in times of emergency, it would prevent anybody from profiteering off water. So, and this may not have a huge impact on us today, but I think in the future, especially if Maine chooses to really go down this privatization route, that may well be important to have that precedent in our state laws. The second one was all of the water districts in the state of Maine. Now, water districts are created through an act of legislation, and if you have a public water service in your town, then you probably have a water district that's the overseeing body, charged with making sure things run properly. Some of them are appointed, but many water districts also go through election process for their trustees, and so we want to encourage all water districts in the state of Maine to go through an election process. And this is a really great place where Maine Greens can enter, enter politics at the local level. Yes, that's where I started. So I earned a seat on the Freiburg Water District, and I encourage you to look in your local communities and maybe start there. And the reason for doing that, it would encourage transparency and accountability directly to the people of that community, and it decentralizes the power that exists within appointments. Sometimes we see a lot of conflicts of interest. In Freiburg, we have a lot of conflict of interested individuals in our community, and so that becomes a problem. So we really want direct accountability. How am I on time?
Both there.
Both there? Okay.
Wrap it up.
And the third one, it may be carried over, but LD 1474 would enforce water districts to consider environmental impacts when engaging in contracts with bulk water extractors. Currently, as we learned in the Supreme Court case, that they don't have to consider environmental impacts, so this would bring it down to the local level and ensure that type of transparency and assurance at a local level. So I just want to leave with a list of what you can do. And first, of course, is curtail your consumption of bottled water. Yeah. And I noticed there was no bottled water here today, and I want to thank you for that. That's right. And increasing availability of tap water in public spaces. There's been a disappearance of public water fountains in the past 10 years. Run for municipal office, serve on your local water district, adopt local water protection ordinance. Find out if your town has one. Learn it. Ask Gil. Gil did a great job of passing a local water ordinance in his community. And yeah, support progressive water policies for future generations. So if anybody has any quick questions, I'd be happy to take one. I saw this one first, but you're second.
First, please.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you're aware that recently there's a lawsuit that was filed in Connecticut against Nestle that claims that none of the water that's used by Poland Springs is actually water from Maine. Right, and it says something about that the company built, it's claiming that the company built and maintained 6 phony man-made springs to comply with the law. And it also alleges that more of the companies are near present or former human waste dump. And the irony of this, I had always believed this because we were buying the stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at a Redacted Tonight episode in Washington, D.C. And I don't know if you guys watch Redacted Tonight, and I happened to get into the audience. And it was talking about this, and it was like mind-blowing that, oh my God, you know, this is not.
So yeah, this is a little civil lawsuit that was brought forward by individuals in different states across the Northeast. And I think looking back in the 1990s, Poland Spring or Nestle settled out of court to prove that their Poland Spring site had gone dry. It wasn't producing because of the over-extraction. But they settled out of court, so the truth never really made it into the forefront on that case. But what they do, and also back in the 90s, Maine changed their definition of spring water, which definitely benefits Nestle.
Imagine that.
Right? So, and now we have the civil suit where they're claiming, the claim is that it's not really spring water. So when we think of a spring, we think of water that comes to the surface, right?
Right.
But how they mine for their water is they drill a borehole close to the spring site, and they take it from deep under the ground. So it's a definition challenge because spring water brings a much higher premium than regular water.
Without objection, we'll continue for 3 more minutes.
Take another question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nickie, for all you do for water justice and water protection here in Maine. And is it possible, you seem so well connected with this issue, that we can come to you with local water protection ordinances? Do we have that in Portland? I'm a Portland resident. I don't really know that. You probably do know off the top of your head. But can we come to you for questions and to kind of organize strategies to protect water all over Maine with the Green Party? Can we do that with you?
Definitely, yeah. There's a few good model ordinances out there, and I'm going to point at Gil again because he took, we see this coming, but being preemptive. These preemptive actions are really important, and I really appreciate that Gil saw that for his community and explained his vision and passed a good water ordinance locally. So he's the person, but yes, you can certainly come to me. And
so we're all connected on what has protection, what doesn't.
Exactly.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
I just don't feel sure of what it is that Gil did, and I wonder if a little summary of your preemptive action and what it involved could be sent to the people who are here today. If Gil would organize that, because I'd like to receive it and have it.
I can give the 25 words or less version.
Well, I won't remember them though. I want them to arrive at my house.
If you wish to.
Okay, well,
that's fine.
Basically, what I did was I went to the town to find out what our water ordinance said, and what I found out was we had none. Which would have allowed any kind of company to come in and extract as much as they wanted. So what we did was then we went to some other towns that had ordinances in place, and actually Nickie came out and met with us, with our committee to help with that. So what we did was we took other ordinances, kind of fit them into our own purpose, and then got that out for the citizens to vote on, and had town meetings to explore that. So basically, first, find out what your town has as far as any kind of water extraction ordinance. If they don't, then get one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's great. And one good thing about how Gil's approach was find out what the community wants first. So you could take a cookie cutter one and try to pass it through, but that's really not taking into consideration what other people's needs are. Find out who your largest water users are, and would your ordinance prohibit, local, small, sustainable businesses. So we want to make sure that it's not going to get shot down too. And another thing is, anyway, I'll say that because that's another whole conversation. Do we have enough time, or do you want to?
Without objection, we'll extend it by 2 more minutes. Please keep the questions brief
Okay.
and the answers brief.
Okay. Yes.
Nickie, it just occurred to me. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, he's good.
Okay, just occurred to me that I'd heard that regulations for bottled water weren't even as strict as tap water. Is this true?
This is true. It's much less regulated than tap water, and we like to feed the idea like our public water is bad and bottled water is better, but it's certainly not the case.
I think I should work in like dirty politics, because wouldn't it be great to go on the offensive and make it extremely difficult for them to bottle their water and make those regulations be like higher than our tap water regulations? Can we do that?
We can do it.
Let's do that. Shut them down.
Okay, one last question from
Nickie, both water district commissioner seats and school board seats are non-affiliated, non-enrolled campaigns. We as a Green Party for many years have been making the school board seats one of our primary focuses. And I have long since believed that we need to do that for water district commissioner seats. Is there any way that we can facilitate helping create a large body of candidates across the state for water district positions?
Can I
Yeah,
just
sure.
interject a little bit with the electoral committee? So, excellent question, and we should definitely seek people to do that. And again, I think it's good along the lines of also knowing what ordinances are out there for water protection. What seats do we have throughout the state on water boards? So I think, again, kind of being organized with what resources we have in different municipalities will help us be more organized in getting these ordinances in place. And then perhaps, people that are interested in doing water protection can converse with Nickie on the exact ways to run an effective race for water district.
Certainly.
If you're up for that.
Yeah, no, I'd be more than open to that. And in doing some research, what we discovered that across the state in rural communities, many times there's at least 5 open seats. And it could be on the planning board, it could be on the conservation commission. So even if, just look for an empty seat and start somewhere. Because bodies are needed to participate in local government, and there's no reason why we all can't do that and learn from occupying one of those seats and learn from there and move up. So, yeah.